At number 10 we have the Green Clawed Beast. Imagine you're out enjoying your afternoon, lounging on an inner tube, floating in the river, when all of a sudden you are attacked by a creature. Because that is exactly what happened to a woman named Naomi Johnson. On August 21st of 1955, Miss Johnson was out enjoying a swim with her friend in Ohio River near Evansville, Indiana. While swimming, Miss Johnson said that she was suddenly grabbed and pulled underwater by a large, hairy claw hand. She struggled underwater until she was able to kick herself free. She resurfaced only to shortly be pulled under again by this creature. Thankfully, Miss Johnson managed to escape once again. When she reached land, she had multiple bruises and wounds on her leg, one of which was a green claw print shaped hand. Now, Miss Johnson never got a good look at the creature, but could sense how big and strong it was from the force it used on her. This encounter was reported to an Air Force colonel who took detailed notes and then told Miss Johnson and her friend to never mention it again. Very suspicious. What is this man hiding? Was it a creature of his own that escaped? No one knows. But what they do know is to never swim in that river again.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Clown Graveyard. With a name like that, you probably think it's a metaphor for something, but the name is literal and the story is tragic. In Forest Park, Illinois lies Woodlawn Cemetery. Some of the graves there are marked by elephant statues. An engraving at the base of one large elephant is inscribed with the words Showman's League of America. All of the graves are marked with the same death date, June 22nd, 1918. On that fateful night, members of the Hagenbeck Wallace Circus were asleep in the rear cars of a train that was passing through the area. At 4 AM, they stopped in the town of Hammond, Indiana to cool an overheated axle box. Little did they know that right behind them, a train driver had fallen asleep at the helm of his empty military train. He missed all the automatic signals and flares that warned him of the stalled train. He smashed right into the wooden circus cars. The survivors tried to scramble out, but soon the train lanterns had ignited the wreckage. It's thought that up to 110 circus employees were killed. They were buried in the mass graves. Many of the victims' names were not even known. So some of the markings have engravings like Baldy, 4-horse driver, or unidentified male. They say that their restless spirits still haunt the graveyard. Apparently they are also joined with the spirits of some of the circus elephants that died. Locals say that to this day the sound of phantom elephants can be heard at night, which I think is a lot creepier than humans. I don't know. Moving on to number 9 now, guys, we have the Thunderbirds. I wish this one was about the nice puppet show that I used to watch as a kid, but it's not. The Thunderbirds are creatures that many people have seen in Illinois, giant birds with wingspans of up to 20 feet. One famous local legend in the town of Alton is that of the Piasa bird, a name given by the Illinois Native Americans meaning bird that devours a man. Now that gives you guys a little clue as to why people fear them. Although the legend has existed for hundreds of years, things took a turn in the 1970s. In 1973, Ruth Lowe was cleaning up after her family had dinner in Lawndale, Illinois. The kids were playing outside when she heard a piercing scream and knew it was her son. When she ran outside, she saw 2 massive birds flying in formation and chasing her son, pecking and clawing at his shoulders. The larger one sunk its claws right into his shirt and lifted him off the ground. Ruth managed to fight them off and release her son, but only after they carried him a distance of over 35 feet. Locals believe that this was a modern day sighting of some Thunderbirds, mythical creatures who have been mentioned in Native American stories for hundreds of years and now seem to be scaring a lot of people in the area. Next, on number 8 now, we have Bloods Point Road. Drive about an hour and a half northwest of Chicago and you can find Bloods Point Road. It's been the focus of a number of paranormal investigations over the years, and not just because of its creepy name. Locals say that as you drive along it, trees begin to look like humans standing guard. Now they say they stretch out in an effort to grab you. You might think that sounds creepy, but they say that the trees are just attempting to warn you of things to come if you choose to continue down that road. Others say that the trees themselves are haunted, that ghosts congregate there. They say that if you're hidden, you can even watch the ghosts moving between the trees. All of this isn't helped by the fact that the road is home to the Bloods Point Cemetery. Legend says that actual hellhounds guard the cemetery gates. These evil dogs appear out of nowhere and attack visitors before instantly disappearing. On dark nights with a full moon, they've even been known to wander out of the cemetery and down Blood Point's road. Perhaps that's what the trees were warning against.
In our 8th spot, we have Walhalla Road. Located in North Columbus, this road is supposedly one of the scariest roads in Ohio. Legend has it that around 1950, a doctor by the name of Mooney and his wife and kids used to live along the road. It is said that one night Mr. Mooney lost his mind and murdered his family along this road. Apparently, if you walk this road in the dead of night, then you will see the ghost of Dr. Mooney murdering his family. You will also be able to hear them screaming and hollering. Like, the name of the road is literally Walhalla, like holla, like get it? Just a weird coincidence. Also, if you walk this road at night, it is said that you can see an eerie blue light appearing from the attic of the Mooney's old mansion. Coming in at number 7, we have Loveland Castle. Although it may sound like a nice place to go for a honeymoon, don't be fooled. It's not. Well, maybe if you guys have a thing for ghosts. Not judging. Now, this castle was actually handmade by a man named Harry Andrews back in 1929. Harry was obsessed with medieval times and architecture and decided to build this towering castle in the middle of the Midwest. Andrew passed away in April of 1981 at the age of 91. Loveland Castle is now a museum spot for tourists to visit. It is said that people have seen a shadowy figure roam the halls that resembles Harry. Typically, this ghost makes an appearance when something in the castle is going to go wrong. This may be Harry's way of still looking after the castle after passing away. In fact, one time, sounds of slamming doors could be heard upstairs. Upon investigation, they noticed that the septic tank was about to overflow. They believe that the slamming doors was Harry's way to warn them about this. And lastly, there's also said to be another spirit roaming the castle. This spirit is referred to as the Viking entity. Now, people believe that this entity is attached to one of Harry's antique swords in the castle. This Viking can be seen in a long black cloak, carrying a sword at his chest.
Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. For 2 weeks in 1934, the residents of Mattoon, Illinois were terrorized by a killer known only as the Mad Gasser. On August 31st, a man called Urban Rafe awoke to a strange smell in his bedroom that made him physically ill. He woke his wife up, who wondered if there might perhaps be a problem with the gas downstairs. When she tried to get up though, she found that she couldn't move her legs. The symptoms went away after a while though, and she found there was nothing wrong with the gas. Nearby, that exact same night, a woman went to check on her daughter, but found that she too was paralyzed from the waist down. The next night, a similar thing happened to another woman. The police began investigating, but found no clues. The local newspapers suggested that there was a madman out in the dark, creeping around and pumping this paralyzing gas into people's homes. He became known as the Mad Gasser. The panic in the town reached such levels that even the FBI got involved, but they too were unable to find a culprit. Reports have died down in the decades since, but some residents are on alert for a copycat Mad Gasser. Coming at number 6 now, we have the Enfield Horror. In April 1973, residents of Enfield, Illinois were all talking about a creature simply known as the Enfield Horror. On April 25th, a boy was attacked in his backyard by a creature with T-Rex-like arms, short claws, pink eyes, grey slimy skin and 3 legs. Later, the creature tried breaking into a neighbour's home where it was shot by a man named Henry McDaniel with a .22 caliber pistol. As the media picked up on the story, a news director for WWKI radio claimed to have actually taped the monster's screams as it ran off. He said he saw the creature cover 50 to 85 feet with just 3 leaps and then vanish out of sight. The police dismissed the reports and discouraged hunters from trying to find the creature. Others ignored the warnings and began investigating. Some parallels were found between the creature's description and some similar reports from the nearby town of Mount Vernon. Those reports came from the 1940s, leading some people to believe that this creature appears every 40 to 50 years, which I think means we are due for the return of the Enfield Horror right about now. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Murfreesboro Mud Monster. In 1973, a young couple was parked by a desolate river in Murfreesboro, Illinois for a romantic night. Suddenly, a huge, wet, hairy beast just climbed out of the water. It was covered in mud. It let out a piercing roar which they would later say sounded like an eagle shrieking into a microphone. The couple fled without waiting to find out what it would do to them. For the next 2 weeks though, the whole town was in panic mode as more and more people had encounters with the huge huge albino beast which came to be known as the Big Muddy Monster. When police investigated, they found huge prints in the ground which seemed to match the size that others had described. When an officer leant down to inspect the print, he heard a horrifyingly shrill screech nearby. The police chief of the town said in an interview, "A lot of things in life are unexplained and this is another one. We don't know what the creature is, but we do believe what these people saw was real." Moving on to number 4 now, we have the Chesterfield Witch. Near the town of Arcola, in what is now known as Amish country, lies the small town of Chesterfield. Its cemetery is said to be home to a witch. Legend says that in life she stood up for the women who were being mistreated in the Amish community. In retaliation, they labelled her a witch and actually accused her of worshipping the devil. The community elders banished her. After that, nobody heard from her. She just disappeared completely. A while later, her body was found in a nearby field. They labelled her death as just down to natural causes and took her to a local funeral home. They put her body on display as a sort of attraction for locals to come and see a real witch. Eventually, after they had their fun, the woman was buried and a tree planted near her grave. In the years since, a deep superstition has grown around that tree. They say that it has bound her spirit to that grave. Legend says that if the tree ever dies, her spirit will be free to seek revenge upon the Amish community who banished her and displayed her body for entertainment. Some say that they've seen her spirit just standing over the grave, patiently waiting for the tree to die. Next up at number 3 now, we have the St. Valentines Day Massacre. On Valentine's Day 1929, 6 gang members in Chicago were lined up and shot by 4 unknown assailants. It's thought that famous mobster Al Capone ordered the killings in an attempt to control organized crime in the city. 2 of the killers opened fire with Tommy guns, spraying the victims left and right, and even continuing to fire after all 7 had hit the floor. They even went round with a shotgun and blew off 2 of the victims' faces. They were brutal murders that shocked the city, and for decades after, dark tourists could actually go and visit the site and see the bullet holes in the brick wall which the men were lined up along and shot. When the building was finally demolished in 1967, the bricks with the bullet holes in were sold to various people, and some people claim they were haunted. The various owners complained of bad luck from the day they first bought these bricks. It got so bad that some of them even returned the bricks to the original site, hoping to break the curse. Even today, some Chicago residents ascribe a negative energy when they walk past the parking lot where the building once stood. They hear gunshots and see floating orbs, a reminder of this bloody massacre from all those years ago. Next up at number 2 now, we have the Pharma City Monster. In the spring of 1970, 3 sheep were killed near the town of Pharma City, Illinois. Officials put it down to just wild dogs. Soon after, 4 teens parked up in a nearby area of the woods. They got the fright of their life when a huge, hairy humanoid with piercing yellow eyes approached the vehicle. Somehow, their flashlights were enough to scare this creature away, and the teens quickly fled the scene. The 2 boys of the group returned later though to investigate, and again they encountered the creature. This time they noticed the smell. It was nauseating and actually forced them to retreat. The police found an area of flattened foliage which they thought was the creature's nest. Over the next 2 weeks, a number of sightings occurred, including one by a police officer and another by some construction workers. They said the creature sprinted out of the woods and crossed the road in front of their van. When the sightings were looked at on a map, some people thought that it showed the creature was on the move, heading northwest. If this was true, perhaps it's moved on. Perhaps it's reached its destination because it hasn't been seen since in the area, but locals say they are ready for its return. And finally at number 1 now, we have Moon Point Cemetery. This is an old Civil War cemetery which has become an obsession of ghost hunters all over Illinois. It began as a family cemetery for a settler called Jacob Moon, but over the centuries it was eventually used by everyone. Of all the spirits said to haunt this place, one of them is perhaps the most famous, the Hatchet Lady. She's been seen carrying a hatchet while watching over her son's grave. She's also been known to shout at visitors to get out whenever they step too close to the area. Now on top of all that, the graveyard is also said to be home to the ghostly spirit of a young boy. Perhaps it's her son. There's even been sightings of multicolored orbs and light, and also the sound of coffin lids opening and closing in the dark.
Moving on to number 6, we have Riders Inn. Now, if you ever need a place to stay in Ohio, don't worry, I got you covered with a list of haunted inns not to stay at. Now, on this list is a bed and breakfast known as Riders Inn. In this inn, you can enjoy their restaurant, comfy accommodations, and of course, 3 ghosts. The first ghost that people have claimed to see is of a man dressed in a Civil War uniform. Now, both the other 2 ghosts are Roxanne and Susanna, the second and third wives of the inn's founder, Joseph Ryder. Apparently, Roxanne is a friendly ghost, whereas Susanna causes trouble around the inn. Inn residents have stated that they have been let into the inn by a woman in a white nightgown when the doors should have been locked. This was either the ghost of Roxanne or Susanna. Now, may I mention that this inn is literally located on a street named Painesville? Like, what are the odds? We are now at our halfway mark with number 5. The Witch's Ball. What's a scary legend without some witches? Myrtle Hill Cemetery in Medina County is known for getting quite the group of interested people. Among all the graves, there's one in particular that stands out, and that's because it's marked with a giant sphere. This story revolves around a woman that endured a lot of suffering throughout her life. As a result, she ended up murdering her family members. She would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling kids and their dog. Just kidding. But I love Scooby-Doo. Classic. But seriously, she would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for the town members who realized that her family just started to disappear. They believed that she was a witch and she was practicing her magic in the woods. As a result, she was stoned to death and buried under the giant sphere. Now, apparently she was buried standing up to make it hard for her to escape, and the spear was put on top as another precaution to make sure she never arose. However, it is said that her spirit has found a way to escape. In the wintertime, snow will not fall on the spear or the ground around it. On top of that, if you touch the spear, it will appear warm from the witch's energy, and in the summer, it will appear cold. People have also claimed that they have seen her figure in the woods by the cemetery or even seen an eye on the ball itself. Coming in at number 4, we have the Akron Civic Theater. Built in 1929 by Marcus Lowe, the Akron Civic Theater is a nice place to watch theatrical performances and even see ghosts. Although this theater is beautiful, it has a much darker past. Now, there is said to be 3 ghosts that haunt this theater. The first ghost is of a janitor named Fred. Fred apparently was the janitor for the theater and passed away one evening on his shift. Fred's ghost has been seen throughout the theater, and in fact, one person reported seeing him standing just outside the main entrance. It is also said that Fred becomes angry for anyone that dirties up the bathroom and will chase or attack them. No thanks. I'd rather hold it in if that's the case. The second ghost is of a man who is said to be a frequent theater goer or even of an actor that used to work there. He is said to lurk on the balcony and is fashionably dressed. And the last ghost is of a woman who died after jumping into the canal, which is below the theater. Her spirit is still said to roam the theater and is often heard crying. Let's move on to number 3 with the Headless Ghost. In October of 1889, a train conductor by the name of John Walsh was bringing the train along the Nickel Plate Railroad in Arcadia. While waiting for the signal that would allow him to continue traveling, he noticed that a section of the train cars had disconnected. While trying to reconnect them, the other missing section came barreling towards him, smashing his head between the 2 cars. In January of 1890, it is said that an engineer has seen John's ghost. Apparently, at night you can see John's headless ghost roaming the tracks looking for his, well, lost head. It is also said that he carries a lantern which he swings back and forth, and people have seen the eerie glow of his lantern at night. In our second spot, we have Helltown. What a nice sounding town to visit in Ohio. Helltown is located in an abandoned town of Newville in Ohio. Now, Helltown wasn't always the name given to this area. It was once known as Boston Mills, but it was bought out by the government, who forced the residents to leave the town. Legend states that the government closed down Boston Mills after a chemical accident that occurred there. As a result of this accident, citizens began to mutate. Some people have claimed to see these disfigured, mutated residents still lurking in the area. It is also said that murdered children roam the woods of Helltown. Apparently, while headed to school, a school bus filled with students ran out of gas. They were stranded in the middle of nowhere when they were killed by a patient from a mental asylum. It is said that the ghosts of these children still roam the woods and can be seen at night along with hearing their screams. Starting off with number 10, the Bloody Headstone. Riverside Cemetery in Appleton, Wisconsin has been a popular attraction site for those who seek a paranormal thrill, or for those who just wish to get haunted. Among the numerous graves in this cemetery, there is one in particular that gets ongoing attention. Kate Blood. Given the nickname Kitty Blood, she was a supposed child killer, witch, and adulteress. Now her ghost is said to roam the cemetery at night and haunt her gravesite. When people visit her secluded grave, they claim to have been pushed or touched by her ghost, and some have even seen her apparition. They also claim that the area around her grave is unusually warm, and that's from her presence lurking around. What is most unsettling is that on the night of a full moon, apparently blood can be seen seeping through her headstone. Honestly, I just feel sorry for the groundskeeper that has to continuously clean up that mess. That's terrible. Alright, making our way to number 9, the Jogging Woman on Vine Street. So, I don't know what's scarier, thinking about going for a run or encountering a ghost that likes to run. Vine Street in Eau Claire is a nice, quiet, peaceful, haunted neighborhood. It is said that the ghost of a woman who was hit and killed by a drunk driver while jogging haunts this street. Her shadowy figure can be seen darting in front of cars, only to disappear right after. You know what? Running already haunts me as it is, so I can't imagine witnessing this as well. At number 8, we have dissected corpses. You know, I have never really been a fan of science or anatomy, but this next legend has me intrigued. The University of Wisconsin is presently known for their advanced research studies. However, there have been stories since the 80s of unethical studies that took place in the basement of the school. It is said that they would grave rob these bodies to dissect and conduct experiments on. The basement is now believed to be haunted by the spirits whose bodies were tampered with. Presently, the school does use cadavers to learn about the human body, however, they do it with respect, and it's only bodies that have been donated to the program. Moving on down to number 7, the Hitchhiker of Highway 12. First off, let me say that if you're one of those people that stop and pick up hitchhikers, what are you doing? You don't know their agenda. They could be a killer, or in this case, a ghost. Apparently along the road of Highway 12, people have claimed to see a scruffy man with a dark beard, long greasy black hair who is dressed in blue jeans and an army jacket. Those who see this man drive past him thinking nothing of it, only shocked when miles down the road they encounter the same guy. Those who are brave enough to stop and offer this man a ride find that he disappears without a trace when they approach him. No one knows why this ghostly man is here or why he is haunting the roadside. Next at number 6, we have the Bloody Bride Bridge. I think a lot of people's worst fear on their wedding day is having either their bride or groom get cold feet and not show up. Well, the Bloody Bride Bridge refers to the legend of a bride who got killed on the bridge while on her way to the wedding. It is now said that you can see this bride in her white dress lurking on the bridge at night. In fact, a police officer has witnessed this firsthand when he spotted her laying down on the bridge. He went to go call for an ambulance, but when he went back to her, she had mysteriously disappeared. It is also said that if you park your car near the bridge around midnight, the bride will appear in the backseat of your car. So, word from the wise, if you and your lover decide to get it on in your car, don't park near this bridge unless you want her in the backseat. We are now at our halfway point with number 5. Hogsback Road, Goatman. Here is another road I suggest you add to your list of places not to visit, and there's a good reason for it. Hogsback Road is said to be home of a strange monster that is half man and half goat. His upper body is that of a man with horns and sharp fingernails, while the lower half of his body is of a goat with reddish fur. It is said that this creature hunts for lost travelers to torment or kill. Apparently this creature was once a man who was killed along this road and is now a restless spirit. In fact, a woman named Mindy Rosette believes that her and her daughter had encountered Goatman. They were driving by this area when the creature ran in front of her car. This is how she described the creature. His legs seemed to be bent back, the knees like a dog's. His muscles were really defined, thighs especially. I couldn't make out the hands because of the way it was running. I couldn't see the feet as I couldn't see past the car hood. Instantly, I knew this was something incredible. In our number 4 spot, we have Boy Scouts Lane. Now, as the name suggests, Boy Scouts Lane may sound like the spot to go where Boy Scouts go to learn to tie knots, roast marshmallows, and do other things that Boy Scout related activities, I don't know. However, as you may have guessed, this is not the case. Boy Scouts Lane is an unpaved, secluded, small trail that is said to be the place where a troop of Boy Scouts were murdered by their scout master. Other versions of the story state that it was the bus driver that murdered them all, or even that they just died in a bus crash. No matter what version of the story you may hear, it all centers around the theme of a group of Boy Scouts' tragic death. It is said that if you roam this path, you may feel as if you are being watched. Witnesses have said that they have seen the apparition of the scout master, and that child-sized handprints have appeared on their car. Honestly, if I'm gonna go encounter these ghosts, they can at least offer me some Boy Scout cookies, especially those Thin Mints. Those are my secret addiction, okay? Bringing it down to number 3, we have the Ridgeway Ghost. Here we go with another haunted road in Wisconsin. Are you shocked? I'm not. Along Route 151, there seems to be 2 shape-shifting spirits that haunt the area. This legend dates back to the 1840s and is said that a bar fight between 2 teen brothers and other men resulted in their tragic death. One of the brothers were torched and burned alive, while the other boy froze to death trying to escape these men. It is said that these ghosts have been seen as a headless horseman, a ball of fire, a man with a whip, or even as a big beast. Other people believe that these ghosts can shapeshift into animals such as pigs and dogs. This ghost could definitely play tricks on people. Like, imagine you're gonna go pet a cute dog and all of a sudden it turns into the Headless Horseman. Yeah. No thanks. Coming in second, we have the Rylander Hoag. Now, if you visit the town of Rylander, you are bound to encounter the Hoag creature, but not in the way you think. This town has numerous statues and paintings of the Hoag all throughout the town. The Hoag is a 265-pound creature with a frog's head, a dinosaur-looking body, short legs, and a long tail. The creature also has 2 large sharp fangs hanging out of its mouth and reddish glowing eyes. It is said that this creature is aware of its ugliness and spends a lot of time crying over it. I'm feeling slightly targeted here. Legend has it that one of these creatures were caught in the 1890s, however there are still more out there. It is also said that there are only 3 ways to kill it: chloroform, dynamite, and lemons. So if you ever plan to visit Rylander, make sure you bring the essentials: toothbrush, toothpaste, chloroform, dynamite, and lemons. I'm sure airport security will understand. And lastly, in our top spot, we have the Marbel Hotel. The Marbel Hotel was once a nice spa for travelers to enjoy, but is now known as Hotel Hell. Legend has it that one night a hotel guest ended up murdering all of the other guests in their sleep. From then on, the hotel has become haunted. The freakiest part about this hotel is that it has burned down 3 different times, but on the exact same day. When that happened, the guests perished in their sleep. It is said that the remains of some of these bodies can be found on the 3rd floor. However, it is now inaccessible from structure failure in the stairs. Still to this day, it is said that you can hear screaming from the basement. Well, now I know where to not stay if I make a trip to Wisconsin. And in our number 1 spot, we have the West Branch Witch. Another witch-related legend. Surprise, surprise. In the West Branch State Park of Portage County, there have been many claims of people encountering a woman dressed in all black. The first appearance was reported in 1960 by a man named B.A. Evans. He recently purchased a piece of land and later discovered a small cemetery on it. This cemetery contains 7 gravestones surrounded by a 40-inch wall. The gravestones are apparently from a family named the Elliots. The headstone that gets the most attention is that of Clemenza. Clemenza was apparently killed by a group of townspeople after being accused of being a witch. As a result, she was pressed. Basically, a wooden board was placed on her, and then on top was piled with stones until her body was crushed by the weight. To this day, her grave is marked by a pile of stones that rests on top of it. It is said that she haunts the graveyard and the surrounding area. In fact, on her tombstone is a curse that says, "Remember youth as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so must you be. Prepare for death and follow me." If you read it out loud by her grave, she will apparently chase you away. Now, this legend continues, saying that one night a group of kids took stones from Clemenza's grave. Later on, they died on their way home in a car accident. but the one kid that didn't take the stone survived. So any geologists out there, I recommend not taking any rocks from this site.
Moving on to number 9 now, we have Athens Insane Asylum. Now this building opened its doors in 1874, becoming one of Ohio's largest asylums for the mentally ill. In the beginning, things went well. It offered some of the best care to its patients. As the years went on, the owners realized that they could put some of the patients to work there, specifically on the nearby farm. The greedier they got, the more patients they took on. By the 1950s, it had become a dumping ground for anyone that a family couldn't afford or simply didn't want to look after. At 2,000 patients, it was now 3 times over its capacity, yet the number of staff remained unchanged. Patients were forcibly restrained for days at a time, left in crowded rooms meant for one person, and regularly beaten by staff. In 1993, the hospital finally closed its doors. The remaining buildings were left to Ohio University. In the years after, students would tell tales of strange figures standing in the empty wings in the former hospital. For me though, the creepy part is the report of a stain on the top floor of the building. They say it's of Margaret Skeeling, a patient who went missing in 1979. She was found 42 days later in an abandoned ward. Tests show that she died of heart failure, yet she was found naked next to her clothes folded neatly on the floor. To the horror of those who found her, the body had decomposed so badly that a stain had seeped into the actual concrete. It couldn't be scrubbed away, and they say to this day the stain can still be seen. Next up at number 8 now, we have the Melon Heads. These humanoid creatures are said to be found in Lake County, Ohio. Now according to legend, the government ran a number of secret experiments on local children there. A man called Dr. Crow performed the experiments on children in an orphanage. The government hoped that they wouldn't cause as much of a stir that way, because nobody would care about the children. Not my words, theirs. Or potentially theirs. The results of the experiment were shocking. The children's hair began to fall out and their bodies mutated, increasing their head to a gigantic size as a result of injecting them with excess fluid. The children feared for their lives. They grouped together and overthrew the twisted doctor, murdering him one night in the orphanage. Then they set fire to the building and fled to the woods to become feral. In the years since, locals have reported seeing fully grown adults with huge heads darting through the trees. While this is already creepy by itself, they also say that the so-called Melon Heads are now cannibals, feeding on any person that wanders too close to the woods. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Reformatory. This is an old prison built in 1896 and designed by Levi T. Schofield. He wanted the place to inspire the inmates to experience a spiritual renewal and give up their harmful lifestyle, repent their wrongdoing. In the end though, it gained a reputation for death, after more than 200 people died there over the years. These days, people say that the building is haunted by the spirits of the dead. One such person is Helen Glatke, the wife of the prison's one-time warden. She was accidentally shot in the lung when a gun fell off a shelf. Now legend says though that she actually killed herself, and the whole accident story was nothing more than a cover-up. Then there's the rumours of a prisoner setting himself on fire in his cell, an old woman roaming the grounds, and also the hole. The hole was said to be a confinement space in the basement of the prison, designed for 20 people at most. However, guards would cram it full of prisoners just to torture them. The pain and anguish suffered within the walls are said to still remain and be heard on cold, dark nights. Moving on to number 6 now, we have Franklin Castle. This Victorian era building is said to be the most haunted house in Ohio, bar none. It's a bold claim, but the story seems to back it up. It was built in the 1880s by a grocer turned banker called Hans Tiedemann. Despite being rich, his life was struck by a number of tragedies. In that house, his 50-year-old daughter died, so too did his mother and 3 other children who died in infancy. His wife became so overcome with grief that she became despondent. He attempted to distract her by turning the house into a sort of castle. He built elaborate tunnels, prominent gargoyles, and a sprawling network of rooms. He stopped though when his wife also passed away. He sold the property. It changed hands a number of times over the decades, and then in the 1960s, reports of hauntings in the house began to spread. There were strange electrical surges, the sound of babies crying, and a mysterious woman in black who roamed the hallways at night. In 1975, human bones were said to be found in a closet in the house. Now since then, there have been reports of an axe murderer there, a mass shooting of Nazis in the basement, and even the hanging of one of the original daughters of the family. People may dispute some of the stories, but some people who visit agree that a lasting presence can definitely be felt at Old Franklin Castle.
Alright, so starting off at our 10th spot, we have the Phantom Kangaroo. Okay, I know it doesn't sound too scary, like a cute little kangaroo, how could it be scary? Well, this one definitely is. So people have described this kangaroo as being 3.5 to 5.5 feet tall, with glowing eyes and supernatural powers. It is said that it can vanish into thin air and can brutally murder local animals. Now, people have claimed to see this phantom kangaroo all throughout Minnesota, but the most recorded sightings were in Coon Rapids. People have said that they have seen this creature rummaging through their trash or even killing pets. People who have seen it have called it a big bunny, but then they would get scared when it disappeared right in front of their eyes. Coming in at number 9, we have the Dogman. This is another creature that has been reported in different regions of Minnesota. So in 2009, a man encountered this cryptid. He was driving along a country road when he spotted some deer. He pulled over and was watching the deer when he spotted what he referred to as a Dogman. He said that this creature was 7 feet tall, 2-legged, and had big, long hands with opposable thumbs. He also said that this creature had a long snout with broad shoulders and muscular thighs. He was covered in dark brown fur. So maybe werewolves are real and this is a version of one. What do you think? Now, thankfully, this creature did not attack this man. They made eye contact, and as soon as they did, the man drove away. Smart thinking. In our 8th spot, we have Peppy the Lake Monster. Now, this lake monster is thought to be similar to Nessie the Loch Ness Monster. In fact, maybe they're related, who knows? Well, Peppy is a massive snake-like creature with a long neck who lives in Lake Pepin. There have been various sightings throughout the 18th and 1900s. People who have seen it have said that it looks like something between the size of an elephant and a rhino and has smooth gray skin. They also said that it can snatch a flying bird right out of the air. Now, Peppy has been considered harmless as there have been no reports of it causing any harm to citizens. In fact, some individuals have gone diving in hopes to see this creature. There is currently a $50,000 reward for anyone who can prove that Peppy is indeed real. So time to put those Photoshop skills to the test. Or maybe it is real and just he's gone into hiding or something. Moving on, at number 7 we have the hairy man of Vergas Trail. Maybe you should think twice before going on a nice little hike in Minnesota. So apparently there have been sightings of a giant hairy man type creature lurking this trail. This creature is supposed to be 8 feet tall with a musty odor. Honestly, I don't know who got close enough to smell this creature. I feel like if it approached me, smelling it would be the last thing on my mind. This creature is also supposed to be very aggressive. A man by the name of Kan Zitzau apparently encountered this creature while driving in the woods. He claimed that this creature jumped on his car and started smashing the hood. Apparently, there are also reports of brutal animal attackings from this creature. So what do you think? You down to come hiking with me? In our 6th spot, we have the Nemic Sanitarium. Seriously, the name of this place literally has nope in it. If that's not a hint to not go there, then I don't know what is. Now, when people hear the word sanitarium, they often associate it with an insane asylum. However, this was not the case. The Nemic Sanitarium was a home for the ill and elderly. In 1912, it was home to thousands of patients with tuberculosis. Many of them died, and as a result, people claim that their spirits still roam the halls. Apparently, if you go there, then you can hear some of the spirits of people moaning in pain. Now, this legend also states that there is a 9-year-old girl that lurks around the sanitarium. People don't know who this girl is, but there have been reports of people hearing her giggle, or even of her appearing in photographs that they have taken of the empty hallways. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Bertha Maynard. Now, legend states that Bertha was accused of being a witch in the late 1800s. It is now said that she haunts her gravesite. People have reported seeing her apparition near her grave, or even hearing her whispers and cries. They even claim that her grave would move around or that her headstone would just disappear. Now, one individual reported his encounter with the ghost. He said that he was just chilling in his car with his lady friend by the grave. He states that out of nowhere, his radio went all staticky and the car's antenna started moving rapidly, despite there being no wind. He believes that Bertha was trying to communicate with him. The legend also describes an event involving some teen kids and Bertha's grave. Apparently, these kids vandalized her headstone, and shortly after, one of the kids' parents passed away unexpectedly. They believed that this was Bertha's revenge. Coming in at number 4, we had the ghost clown. Now, what's scarier than a clown? A ghost clown. So apparently this ghost clown can be seen along the trail of Lake Almagne. There you go, another reason why we just shouldn't go hiking. Legend has it that this clown just stands and stares at you as you walk the trail. Legend has it that he doesn't want you walking this trail, so he will stalk and stare at you until you leave. They also claim to have seen this clown's apparition appear and then disappear randomly, or have even seen weird shadowy figures darting in and out of the trees. But my question is, who is this ghost clown man? What happened in the forest, and why is the ghost dressed like a clown? Or maybe Pennywise has found a new hiding spot. Who knows? In our third spot, we have Duluth's East Little Theater. This next urban legend is quite an interesting one. Now, apparently a drama director died in this theater after falling off the balcony. Before his death, he was in the midst of writing a play. However, because of this accident, he was never able to finish it. Now, legend has it that one day his script mysteriously appeared on an English teacher's desk. Attached to the script was a note written on an old stationery that read, "Please perform this." And then it was signed by him with the initials RC. Now, they never did end up performing this piece, for obvious reasons. I mean, that must have been terrifying. But drama students say that they hear weird noises in the theater and sometimes feel a cold presence. Coming in at number 2, we have the Wendigo. Now, apparently the Wendigo has been seen in forests of colder regions like Minnesota and Canada. Dang it, why does it have to be in Canada too? So, the Wendigo is a giant creature that can be up to 15 feet tall. They are skinny and often have antlers coming out of their head. Now, there have been several reports of this creature being seen in forests all throughout Minnesota. People believe that this creature evolved from a lost hunter. They claim that his hunger and the extreme cold weather drove him to cannibalism. Wendigos are then said to hunt down and eat humans. Wendigos look terrifying. Like, imagine being a hunter and seeing the antlers from behind a tree and hoping you're gonna catch a deer, and then next thing you know, it's this gigantic creature hunting you. Spooky. No thank you. And in our number 1 spot, we have the UFO attacks. So there are UFO sightings in every city basically. Anything in the sky that looks a bit odd is automatically claimed as a UFO, and people believe it too. Even if it was reported by old Mr. Jenkins who wasn't even wearing his glasses. So in August of 1979, a deputy by the name of Val Johnson suffered an attack from what he claims was a UFO. So this deputy was in the Marshall County when he saw a strange light on the road ahead of him. He drove towards the light when all of a sudden it completely filled his car and blinded him. Half an hour later, he woke up in a ditch. He had welder burns on his eyes, and the time on his wristwatch and dashboard clock was off. His car had a smashed headlight and his antenna was bent. Police have no explanation as to what happened, and since then, this has become a well-known urban legend.
Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Loveland Frogmen. This is a really weird one, guys, and I'm saying this as a guy who has done more urban legends videos than he's had hot dinners. Residents of the town of Loveland have been reporting since 1955 that amphibious men live along the river there. The first sighting occurred when a businessman claimed to have witnessed 3 bipedal quasi-reptilian entities congregating by the side of the road. The man pulled his car to the curb and watched the creatures for about 3 minutes. He described them as being 3 to 4 feet tall, covered with leathery skin and having webbed hands and feet. While they had some human-like features, he said that they had distinctly frog-like heads. Just before the creatures left, one of them seemed to wave what the witness described as a wand above its head. Like an actual magical wand. Sparks apparently came out of it. The man left, but over the years many have reported similar experiences, leaving many locals to see the Frogman as just a strange part of reality. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Grassman. You can think of this one as Ohio's version of Bigfoot. It's said to have all the same characteristics, a tall bipedal hominid that skulks around Ohio's deep woods. The Grassman gets its name from apparently building small hut-like structures or nests made out of tall tall grass. The first sighting occurred in 1978 when some local kids ran into their grandparents' home screaming about a hairy monster they had just seen in the gravel pit outside. When the grandparents went outside to investigate, they saw it too. They said it was covered in dark matted hair, sitting in the pit and fiddling with some trash. They later estimated it to be about 300 pounds. The family fled, but it wasn't the last time that they or many other locals saw them. When people started investigating, they found records from the 1700s of Native Americans in the area who spoke of a race of bipedal ape men. They referred to them as the wild ones of the woods and would often leave food out for them in an effort to keep the peace. Next up at number 3 now we have the Cincinnati Music Hall. This is a classical music performance hall in Cincinnati, completed in 1878. Before construction was even finished, it was said the location was a place where the dead render the lives of the living a burden to them. How intense does that sound? When a nearby canal was being made, authorities found over 100 human skeletons that had to be removed. They buried them in the ground on which this building now stands on. More remains were placed there in 1838 when a steamboat exploded and flung bodies all over the city. They were also buried in the ground below the music hall. If that wasn't enough to creep you out, it also stands atop of an old orphan asylum and an old Civil War hospital. All of this has resulted in locals claiming it's the most haunted place in town. One night watchman felt the presence of ghosts there. He said, "They never touch me, but I always know when they are around, by an icy chill, a thrill of electricity. They never annoy me now by mere knocking, for I have gotten so used to it. So used to it that sometimes when people have really knocked at the door, I didn't open, because I thought it was only the dead that kept knocking, knocking, knocking." Well, I'm glad he can be so calm with dead people knocking at the door at night. Most of us would just nope right out of there. I know I definitely would. Moving on to number 2 now guys, we have Lake Hope Furnace. During the Industrial Revolution, this furnace was used to process iron ore gathered from the area's sandstone bedrock. After 20 years, the furnace is shut down, but some say creepy stories still remain. They say that in order to ensure the furnace continued operating at night, watchmen were employed to tend to the furnace fires. On one fateful night, a watchman was walking along the platform with his lantern when he slipped in the darkness and fell into the bubbling ore inside the furnace. He screamed out for help, but was consumed in seconds. Now, legend says that on stormy nights, a ghostly watchman returns to make his rounds. There have been dozens of reports of a dark figure carrying a lantern walking along the top of Lake Hope Furnace. Some even say the figure continues pacing back and forth across the furnace until lightning strikes nearby, causing him to disappear until the next stormy night. Next up at number 9 now we have the Defiance Werewolf. This is a very famous one. The people of Defiance in Ohio have claimed that for the past 45 years or so they've been terrorized by a werewolf. It was first sighted in 1972. Over the summer there were many sightings of a rampaging, hair-covered beast on 2 legs. It was said to have a muzzle and was always covered in rags. The local media went into a frenzy and even the police opened up a case file on the sightings. There have been many sightings since then. Many of them were around a series of old railroad tracks in the town, usually late at night. One of the first sightings was by a Mr. Davis. Now he said, "I was connecting an air hose between 2 cars and was looking down. I saw these huge hairy feet. Then I looked up and he was standing there with that big stick over his shoulder. When I started to say something, he took off for the woods. His friend, Mr. Jones, was with him at the time. He said, at first I thought the whole thing was a big joke, but when I saw how hairy and woolly it was, that was enough for me." Next up at number 8 now we have Brubaker Bridge. According to legend, in the 1930s there was a brutal one-car accident on this bridge over Sam's Run Creek, Butler County. The bridge is in a very rural area and nobody actually discovered the crash victims until later that night when a local farmer passed by. The farmer went to get help and a total of 12 bodies were recovered. They were eventually identified and given proper burials. That wasn't the end of things though. Shortly after, the farmer who originally discovered the bodies claimed that while crossing the bridge one night after, his car suddenly cut out. He said that he heard 13 knocks on his car, then a hissing noise before suddenly the car just came back to life. Locals say that this is the spirit of the 13th victim whose body was never recovered. The spirit is still said to haunt those who pass over the bridge, hoping they will be the ones to finally find its body and give them a proper burial so that they may pass on peacefully. Next up at number 7 now we have Stony Creek Cemetery. The story goes like this. In 1825, the local caretaker in Stony Creek Cemetery Cemetery in Adams County made a discovery. At the bottom of a large tree was the body of a young man. It didn't take much to figure out the cause of death, as the man's head was completely missing. Although it's hard to beat that in terms of strangeness, there was one other thing. The crime scene was clean of any blood around this headless body. The police determined the murder must have taken place somewhere else before the perpetrator then dumped the body in the cemetery. Rumours began to spread that the head had not been cut off, but rather ripped off by something extremely powerful. The case remained open and unsolved for many years before entering books of folklore. There are those that say that some nights a misty figure appears under a tree in the cemetery, the ghost of this unidentified man, unable to find peace until his murder is solved. Moving on to number 6 now, guys, we have Patterson Tower. There are a number of theories about the origin of this strange tower, thought to be built by a John D. Patterson many years ago. According to legend, a group of teenagers in the 1960s took refuge in the tower during a thunderstorm. As the storm raged on, a lightning bolt hit the top of the tower. Electricity surged down the metal stair rail and electrocuted 2 of the teenagers, killing them almost instantly. They say that in the weeks afterwards, you could still see their charred outlines on the tower wall. Officials blocked off the tower from dark tourists by placing metal plates across the door. Visitors still just ripped them off though to see what was inside. Legend now says that on stormy nights, the shadowy spirits of the teenagers who died can be seen in the tower. A bright bolt of lightning will illuminate their ghosts, making them glow as if they had just been hit by lightning. When the storm fades, so do they. Until the next time. Coming at number 5 now, we have Little Sugar Creek. The town of Bellbrook is sometimes referred to as Ohio's Sleepy Hollow because of all the ghostly legends that originated there. A man called James Buckley ran a sawmill there many years ago. He lived in a small cabin and grew his business to great heights, becoming the wealthiest man in the town. One night, his newfound wealth attracted some robbers. When authorities finally arrived to help him, they found Buckley's headless body outside. The murder was never solved. People say the cabin was haunted then by his spirit. Those who ventured there say they've been confronted by a headless ghost, his arms outstretched as if begging for help. In time, the sawmill was demolished, but that didn't bring an end to the sightings. Locals still say that if you wander down to Little Sugar Creek, where the sawmill once stood, you can still see the ghost of James Buckley, unable to pass on peacefully while the case of his brutal murder has been left cold. Moving on to number 4 now, we have Otterbein Cemetery. This one is also known as Bloody Horseshoe Grave. During the 1840s, an Ohioan called James Henry was involved with 2 women at the same time, Rachel Hodge and Mary Angle. He wanted to know which one to marry. One night while riding home, he fell asleep on his horse. He awoke to find his horse had not taken him home, but had instead stopped in front of Mary Angle's house. He took this as a sign, and soon he and Mary were married. As his wedding gift to her, he gave her the horse that brought them together. They lived happily, but in 1845, Mary died from one of the many prevalent diseases at the time. She was buried in Otterbein Cemetery. Henry began courting Rachel Hodge, and eventually the 2 were married. He gave her the same horse as a wedding gift. They hadn't been married long before locals noticed something strange about Mary's tombstone. There was a glowing outline of a horseshoe on it. James took this as a sign that Mary was displeased with his new marriage. They said he was cursed. One night, witnesses heard strange noises and lights coming from the cemetery. The next morning, James was found dead in his barn with the mark of a horseshoe on his forehead. His death was ruled an accident, as Henry had been alone in the barn at the time, all alone except for one other creature, a horse. Even today, they say a strange horseshoe mark is still visible on Mary's tombstone, and that on some nights you can hear the sound of hooves trotting up the cemetery road. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Buxton Inn. This place has been going since 1812, making it one of the oldest inns in Ohio. In the mid-1800s, Major Buxton, after whom the inn was named, took control of the inn. There have been reports of ghosts there ever since. Many of the ghosts alleged to haunt the inn are said to be of previous owners. However, there's also strange knockings people have heard coming from the basement where the stagecoach drivers would have stayed. The door to that same basement is known to open and close by itself, and there have even been reports of footsteps coming up and down the stairs there. Major Buxton's spirit is said to be a shadowy figure, often sighted in the dining room. Another owner, Orrin Granger, appears as an elderly woman wearing old-fashioned breeches who is said to steal pies from the kitchen. There's also the lady in blue, who died in the inn and is recognizable by her distinct perfume. There's even a phantom cat that enters enters people's rooms at night in much the same way it did when it was alive. Next up at number 2 now, we have Old Raritan. The story goes that as European settlers first began to arrive in the Ohio Valley, wolf attacks on livestock became more and more frequent. Farmers began to hunt down the wolves, possibly to the point of extinction, but none of them could have predicted what came next. One wolf in particular always managed to escape the farmers. A huge grey one became known as Old Raritan. Farmers often reported seeing him and his mate wandering through the woods, but they never could corner him. Eventually they became the only wolves that remained. One night the wolves were trapped with their backs against Big Rock, a famous landmark. The hunters opened fire and brought the female down. Just as the hunters set their dogs loose to finish her off, a loud cry echoed through the woods. Old Raritan leapt in front and fought the dogs off. The hunters opened fire and wounded him too. Eventually they called off their dogs. Old Raritan dragged his now dead mate up to the top of Big Rock. Once there, he let out a thunderous howl across the backdrop of the moon and then slumped down beside his mate. All was quiet, but not forever. On certain nights, locals say you can still hear a painful howl, and that if you head to the top of Big Rock, you'll be faced with the ghost of Old Raritan, still ready to fight in his afterlife. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Bloody Bridge. Sometimes you can just tell from these titles where these stories are heading. This bridge lies just outside of Spencerville, crossing the Miami-Erie Canal. According to legend, the bridge was the site of a grisly murder in 1854. In the years before that, a rivalry grew between 2 local men, Bill Jones and Jack Billings. Both had fallen for a woman called Minnie Warren. In the end, Minnie chose Jack, sending Bill into a fit of rage. One night in 1854, Minnie and Jack began to cross the bridge on their way home from a party. At the other end though stood Bill. He was holding an axe. They didn't have time to run. Bill took one swing and severed Jack's head clean off. Minnie screamed and jumped off the bridge and into her watery grave. Bill then disappeared until his skeleton was found years later in a well. Was it or revenge from the couple's family? Either way, the years since then have seen reports of ghostly images of the murdered couple on the bridge. Some even say that when the water gets dark enough, you can look over the bridge and see Minnie Warren's face staring right back at you in horror.
Number 10. The Bisman Building. The Bisman Building was built in 1886, and fun fact, the film Shawshank Redemption used this place as a filming location. If you have seen the film, the building is used as the entrance to the Burough Hotel, where Brooks and Red stayed after they were paroled from Shawshank. The real building though is haunted. While here many people experience a feeling of dread and sadness, particularly on the 3rd floor. Many people also report an overwhelming sensation of darkness when on this floor, so if I were you, I would just stay away from the 3rd floor in general. Disembodied footsteps, voices, being poked and pushed, black shadows and dark figures caught in images seems to be something that happens a lot. Spirits of a young girl Ruthie, her aunt, and the spirit of a retired worker who died in an accident before leaving the building are 3 identified spirits that stay here. In past investigations here, investigators have received audible responses to their questions. Yep, the ghosts spoke to them. One piece of audio evidence was when an investigator asked if they could speak to Ruthie, and a voice was caught saying, "Is Ruthie here?" In addition to Ruthie, people have witnessed the spirit of a woman throughout the upper floors, people in Victorian clothing, and the sounds of people working. Number 9. Staley Road. Sometime in the early 1800s, pioneer John Wrench used the services of 3 Staley brothers to build a flour mill. The finished structure was to become the first double-wheeled mill in Ohio. The business flourished, and after several years, John had made enough money to retire and ended up selling his mill to Elias Staley. The mill was then passed down to his brother Andrew and continued to produce flour until 1905. Today, the mill is still standing, and on Staley Road, named for the brothers, winds its way past and through the woods. It has become something of a rite of passage for local teens to drive this road at night to show how brave they are. It's been said that Old Man Staley went on a rampage, ending the lives of many, and is now haunting the road. Motorists say that they often experience unexplained car trouble, and some have even seen Staley's ghost standing next to or even lying in the road. Number 8. The Golden Lamb. As the oldest hotel in Ohio, the Golden Lamb has seen more than its share of famous guests, including Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Daniel Webster, and 12 American presidents. Yeah, 12th. It's fantastic, but there's also been death and tragedy in the hotel. Guests have cited a girl who may be Sarah Stubbs, the niece of the hotel manager in the 1800s, or possibly Eliza Clay, a girl who died of a high fever at the hotel in 1825. The ghost of Charles R. Sherman, an Ohio Supreme Court justice who died at the inn in 1929, is said to appear in the hallways as a gray, gaunt man and conjures the smell of cigar smoke. Charles's death left his wife and 11 children, including Civil War General William T. Sherman, penniless. As a result, most of his children were put up for adoption, and some say the guilt of his family's demise keeps his spirit at the inn. Number 7. Moonville Tunnel. Located deep in the woods, the tunnel is framed by a faded stone archway covered in moss. The tunnel itself is long and extremely dark. It's actually an out-of-work stretch of railroad track that leads to an old coal mining town. If you're brave enough to venture through it, you might see the ghost of Frank Lawhead, an unlucky train conductor who met his end in a head-on collision with another train. Visitors in the area have taken photos with cameras or phones, only to look back at them later and notice the pale figure of a man they didn't see before, or phantom train lights blazing at the end of the tunnel. It's also said if you listen carefully, inhale deeply, and blink intermittently, you may encounter spirits from another time. The piercing whistle of a train rounding a curve, the smell of lavender wafting from a woman in an old-fashioned dress, or even the glow of gaslit lantern illuminating the face of the weathered brakeman. So that's fun. Number 6. The Buxton Inn. The Buxton Inn was built by Orrin Granger in 1812 as an inn and tavern, and it also served as Granville's first post office and as a stagecoach stop. I'm just gonna say it, this place is haunted. The first ghost spotted in the Buxton Inn was the first owner, Orrin. Other ghosts include the Lady in Blue, rumored to be the former innkeeper Ethel Bonnie Bonnell, Major Buxton, whom the inn was named, and even a phantom cat seen slinking along the halls. There's been strange activity like footsteps and doors opening on their own reported in the inn's basement, where stagecoach drivers would often stay during their stopovers in the past. However, the ghosts just don't stay in the basement. Oh no. Rooms 7 and 9 are said to be the strongest places for activity, with apparitions appearing. One guest even reported a ghost cat showing up to cuddle and purr in the middle of the night, which, like, aw, that's so cute. Guests have reported strange phenomenon throughout the hotel though, like their names being called out and invisible footsteps. I would not want to sleep there. Number 5. Woods surrounding London. Okay, again, not London, England, but London, Ohio. Deep inside these woods sits an old abandoned barn that is so rotted away it is practically melded back into the trees. It's rumored that ghosts like to spend some time here. If you ask anyone from the area, they'll tell you that these woods are haunted. According to legend, a family of 5 was traveling through the woods in the late 1890s when they were stopped and had their lives ended by a band of thieves. Those brave enough to wander through the woods of London at night have reported hearing gunshots and disembodied screaming. Others have felt a sudden drop in temperature before seeing a strange white mist hanging in the trees. Let me just say, it's a no for me.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Loveland Frog. As someone who is not from Ohio, this is probably the most famous of all the Ohio urban legends I came across. The Loveland Frog is an urban legend that originated in Loveland, Ohio in the 1950s, and according to the legend, a group of local men spotted a humanoid, frog-like creature near the Little Miami River. They claimed that the creature was about 4 feet tall, had leathery skin, and webbed hands and feet. Over the years, there have been several reported sightings of the Loveland Frog, including one in 1972 by a police officer named Ray Shockey. Shockey claimed that he saw a strange creature. It's so funny that his name is Shockey and that he saw like a strange, what is more shocky? You know what I mean? Shockey claimed that he saw a strange creature on the side of the road while on patrol. When he got closer, he saw that it was a creature with leathery skin and frog-like features. Shockey drew his gun and fired at the creature, but it quickly ran away and disappeared. The legend of the Loveland Frog has become a very popular topic among paranormal enthusiasts and cryptozoologists. Some believe that the creature could be an undiscovered species of amphibian or reptile, while others think it could be a hoax or a misidentification of a known animal. Regardless of its origins, the legend of the Loveland Frog has become a part of Ohio folklore, and the creature has become an iconic figure in the world of cryptozoology. In our number number 9 spot today we have Ohio State Reformatory. Also known as Mansfield Reformatory, this spooky place is a former prison located in Mansfield, Ohio. It opened in 1896 and it closed in 1990. The prison is known for its very violent history and inhumane conditions, with reports of harm, bad conditions, and overcrowding. The prison is also rumored to be haunted, with many visitors reporting strange occurrences such as cold spots, unexplained noises, and ghostly apparitions. One of the most famous ghosts said to haunt the prison is that of Helen Glatke, the wife of a former superintendent who died in a car accident outside of the prison. Her spirit is said to still wander the prison, often appearing in the chapel or the administration area. Another famous ghost is that of the ghost in the tower, believed to be the spirit of a former inmate who died in a tragic accident while working in the prison's bell tower. Visitors have reported hearing his screams and seeing his ghostly figure in the tower. The prison has been featured in several films and TV shows, including The Shawshank Redemption and Ghost Adventures, which of course only worked to further popularize its reputation as a haunted location. In our number 8 spot today we have the Lake Hope Furnace. The Lake Hope Furnace in Ohio has a dark and haunting history that has given rise to many tales of paranormal activity. The furnace was built in the mid-19th century to process iron ore mined in the area. Many workers lost their lives due to the dangerous working conditions, and the furnace was shut down in the early 1900s. Over the years, visitors to the area have reported strange occurrences, including unexplained noises, sudden drops in temperature, and ghostly apparitions. Many believe that the spirits of the workers who died at the furnace still haunt the area. One of the most famous stories associated with the Lake Hope Furnace is that of a ghostly woman in a white dress who is said to wander the grounds. Legend has it that the woman was the wife of a worker who was killed in an accident at the furnace. She is said to be searching for her husband's lost wedding ring, which she believes is still somewhere on the property. Another ghostly tale is that of a former worker who is said to have lost his life here but was never able to leave. Visitors have reported seeing his spirit coming by the furnace in order to light it. While he carries a lantern in one hand, if anybody gets too close to him, it's said he vanishes into the darkness. In our number 7 spot today we have the Werewolf of Defiance. The legend of the Werewolf of Defiance in Ohio dates back to the early 1900s. According to the story, a man who lived in the woods near Defiance was rumored to have transformed into a werewolf on nights of the full moon. Local residents claimed to have heard howls and seen a large wolf-like creature lurking in the shadows. Some even reported close encounters with the creature, which was said to be larger and more ferocious than any normal wolf. Despite numerous attempts to hunt the creature, the werewolf was never caught. The legend of the Werewolf of Defiance continues to be a popular topic of discussion in the area, and many believe that the creature still roams the woods to this day. Whether the Werewolf of Defiance was a real creature or simply a product of local folklore remains a mystery. In our number 6 spot today we have Satan's Hollow. Satan's Hollow is a drainage tunnel located in Blue Ash, Ohio, and it has been long rumored to be the site of supernatural activity. According to legend, the tunnel was once used by a group of Satanists who performed dark rituals and sacrifices within its walls. People who have ventured into the tunnel have reported seeing strange symbols and hearing ghostly whispers. Some have even claimed to have witnessed apparitions of demons and other supernatural beings. The legend of Satan's Hollow has attracted many curious visitors over the years, and some have reported strange experiences such as unexplained temperature drops and sudden feelings of unease. Despite warnings from authorities and the dangers of the tunnel itself, and the fact that the tunnel is technically private property, many continue to seek out the site in search of thrills and scares, looking for the creature behind the most haunting tale of all, the Shadow Man. In our number 5 spot today we have the Ridges. Athens Lunatic Asylum, also known as the Ridges, is a former mental institution located near Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. It has a long history of ghostly tales and supernatural occurrences. According to legend, the asylum was a site of brutal treatments and patient mistreatment, leading to the creation of restless spirits haunting the halls. There have been reports of shadowy figures, disembodied voices, and inexplicable noises, leading many to believe that the spirits of former patients still linger within the abandoned building. One of the most famous stories is that of Margaret Schilling, a patient who disappeared in 1978 and was found later dead in a hidden attic room. Her decomposing body left a stain on the floor that is said to be impossible to remove. The asylum has become a popular destination for paranormal investigators and thrill seekers, with many claiming to have had chilling experiences while exploring the abandoned institution. Despite its dark history and eerie reputation, the Athens Lunatic Asylum remains an important reminder of the past and the need for compassionate and ethical treatment of those suffering from mental illness. In our number 4 spot today, we have Eugene. This is less of a creepypasta and more of an enduring mystery, and it all starts with a John Doe story. In 1929, the body of an older male appeared on the side of the road in Ohio. No one was ever able to identify who the man was, no one knew where he came from, or really had anything to go on. The only possible clue he had on him was an address, but it just led to a vacant lot. The closest neighbor to the address was named Eugene, so they decided to call this unidentified man Eugene as well. This is where a bit of a twist comes in. Instead of burying him, they decided to keep Eugene on display as a roadside attraction. Truly wish I was making that up, because first of all, Eugene deserves better than that, but also, who wants to see a dead body as a tourist attraction? For 35 years, Eugene was put on display until he was finally laid to rest. This is what has led his tombstone to read, Eugene, found dead in 1929, buried in 1964. To this day, we still don't quite know who Eugene was, where he came from, or what his story truly was. In our number 3 spot today, we have Beaver Creek. Beaver Creek State Park in Ohio is a popular destination for outdoor enthusiasts, but it is also the home to a very spooky urban legend. The park is said to be haunted by the ghost of a woman who drowned in the creek many years ago. According to the legend, the woman's body was never found, and her ghost now wanders the park searching for her lost family. There are also reports of strange noises and ghostly apparitions in and around the park's historic buildings, such as the Gaston's Mill and the log cabins. Some visitors have reported feeling a sense of unease or being watched while exploring the park, particularly at night. Another one of the most well-known ghost stories associated with Beaver Creek State Park is the legend of the Headless Motorcyclist. According to the legend, a man lost his head in a motorcycle accident on the road that runs through the park. His ghost now rides his motorcycle through the park looking for his missing head. Some visitors claim to have seen the ghostly figure on his motorcycle, while others have reported hearing the sound of a motorcycle engine revving in the distance. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Coin Mansfield incident. What is a good old list of legends and spooky stories without a very real UFO incident, and perhaps one of the best known UFO sightings to take place in the state of Ohio. The Coin Mansfield helicopter incident occurred on October 18, 1973, when 4 members of the Ohio Army National Guard were flying in a helicopter over Mansfield, Ohio. Suddenly, they encountered a large metallic disc-shaped object that was hovering in the sky. The object began to move towards the helicopter, causing the crew to take evasive maneuvers. Despite their efforts, the object continued to follow them, eventually passing overhead and disappearing into the distance. The crew reported the incident to their superiors, and an investigation was launched by the military and the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA. The incident received significant media attention, and it remains one of the most compelling UFO sightings on record. What makes this incident particularly intriguing is the credibility of the witnesses. The crew were all experienced pilots with military training, and their account of the incident was corroborated by radar data and other witnesses on the ground. Despite extensive investigations, no satisfactory explanation has ever been offered for what they saw that day. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Gore Orphanage. Gore Orphanage is an abandoned building located in Vermilion, Ohio, that has long been the subject of haunting tales and urban legends. According to legend, in the early 1900s, a fire broke out in the building, killing everyone inside. The ghosts of those lost to the fire are said to haunt the surrounding woods and the building, and visitors have reported hearing the sounds of children's laughter and cries. Some versions of the legend claim that the orphanage was actually a satanic cult site where humans were sacrificed in bizarre rituals. Others claim that the place was actually just a place where real, non-magic or demonic related horrors took place. Despite the lack of evidence to support these claims, the legend of Gore Orphanage persists and has inspired numerous ghost hunters and paranormal investigators to explore the abandoned building. However, it is important to note that the building is private property and trespassing is illegal, okay? So don't say I didn't warn ya.
And we're kicking off this list with a very recent Ohio Bigfoot report. This one is detailed on the BFRO, or the Bigfoot Field Researchers website, where there are tons of different eyewitness reports of the elusive beast, but this is a good one to start off with because it just happened back in January of this year. On January 22nd, on a snowy afternoon in Warren County, Ohio, a family reported seeing a big creature standing near a bike path while they were driving down the road. The father of the family wrote, "As we were driving along State Route 350 towards State Route 123, south of Oregonia, we came to the Loveland bike trail that runs next to the Little Miami River. As I slowed down near the bike path crossing, we looked out the passenger side of the car and saw a large black figure standing a distance up the bike path facing the river while it was snowing. The ground was covered with at least 3 inches of snow, so it didn't appear that someone would be on the bike path biking or walking the trail. The weather was not ideal for anyone to be hunting or walking on the path at the time. The figure appeared to have come from the woods and was walking towards the river." He also described the figure as having no obvious clothing pattern, being consistently dark, and that his wife and 2 teenage children also spotted it. There have apparently been at least 9 credible sightings of a supposed Bigfoot-like creature in the same area too. Number 9, Bigfoot howls. In this video uploaded by We Do It Outdoors, we see our cameraman roaming through a forest in Lore City, Ohio. The sun is starting to set and we hear a series of strange, eerie howls and tree knocks. We Do It Outdoors seems to have started as a channel about maintaining lawns, but over the last few years there have been a number of Bigfoot related videos uploaded on there, one of which I may or may not be discussing later in the list. And whether they're real or not, some of them are pretty entertaining. We get some genuinely creepy sounds in this video. It definitely sounds like something or someone is howling in the distance. If I heard sounds like this while I was in the forest, I'd just turn right around immediately. This guy sticks around until it's like fully dark and the sounds just get louder and louder. Real or not, it's definitely a creepy video. Number 8, the Jefferson County report. Next up, I have another report detailed on the Bigfoot Field Researchers website. This incident was reported in July of 2021, still pretty recent, in Jefferson County, Ohio. A man describes finding a large footprint in his chicken coop, as well as all of his chickens having gone missing. He's quoted saying, "On July 9th at approximately 10 a.m., I noticed my 5 chickens were missing. The chicken coop was full of feathers, but no bodies or blood. I did a perimeter check and came across an extremely large footprint. I went back to the house and brought down a tape measure to the footprint and measured it and took pictures with the tape measure beside it. The footprint measured a length that was apparently 18 inches with a width of about 9 to 10 inches. A Bigfoot investigator named Jim Thompson came to investigate the man's property and discovered more footprints that were about 4 feet apart from one another. That's about double the gait of an average person, by the way. On July 24th, a couple weeks after making his initial report, the man described hearing strange yelps coming from either end of his property as if they were yelping back and forth to each other. And he also said that on some nights he gets an eerie feeling that something is watching him. I have that almost every night too. At number 7, we have Susan Ferenchak. Suzanne Ferenchak is a former skeptic turned Bigfoot enthusiast. After spotting a strange hairy creature near her home in Loudonville, Ohio, she had first spotted what she described as a big black-furred creature jump over the road. Not sure where said road was exactly or what type of road it was. If it was a highway road, that would be nuts. It was just a small dirt road. Still scary, not quite as impressive though. Suzanne has recorded audio of what she believes to be a Sasquatch while out in the wilderness near her home and has shared the 2-minute clip online. I gave it a listen. The quality, not great, but it's definitely eerie. You hear this distant howling. It definitely doesn't sound like a wolf. You also get some classic, whoops in there too, which a lot of Bigfoot researchers describe Sasquatches, making. Whether it's a genuine Bigfoot or not, I really just dig supposed Bigfoot audio. I just imagine being out alone in the woods at night and hearing some distant wail and whooping, and human or not, I mean, it'd be pretty bone chilling. All right, now I'm going to share the last report from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. At least for this video anyway, there are tons on the site. This one was reported in Mahoning County, Ohio in July of 2021. Sorry if I'm messing up the pronunciation there. A man had described seeing a strange creature one evening after returning home with his wife, and is quoted as saying, "Tonight, yet another sighting by our pond. My wife and I were at dinner, and as we arrived home about 8:30 p.m., a large, fast, gray and silver, light brown, covered in fur Bigfoot darted from the bushes in our front into the cattails in our pond on all fours. We both looked at each other and said, 'Did you just see that?' The subject was down low and bent in the middle as it moved. Unlike a dog, its undulating movement was not as fluid as a dog. It was not a bear. It appeared to be from 4 to 5 feet at the back and torso built like a barrel. When it went into the cattails, we were no longer able to see it." Number 5, the 1992 Grassman sighting. Grassman is again the name often given to the big ape-like creature or creatures that so many Ohio locals have spotted. And in this video, taken in eastern Ohio in 1992 by a man named Don Keating, he had spotted what looked like a large hairy creature walking into the forest. He managed to capture it on camera, and though the footage is very grainy and he was a fair distance away from it, there is definitely something walking into the forest. It's not the most convincing video evidence. It's hard to tell what you're looking at, but I do always find something eerie about old 90s VHS footage, and Keating seems to believe he saw some kind of large cryptid. So this video was featured on Monster Quest and features an interview with Keating describing what he saw and that he was a skeptic before this encounter. I always like it when they say they were skeptics before, because, you know, it's a bit more convincing that way. At number 4, we have the famous Minerva monster case. Back in 1978, a family living in Minerva, Ohio, reported what they believed to be a large, Bigfoot-esque cryptid around their home. The Caton family reported rocks being thrown at their home by the creature and would spot large footprints in their backyard. But there are other reports of a mysterious creature in the area around the same time. The Caton's neighbor also spotted the big hairy creature, as well as other residents of the area. The case became known as the Minerva Monster Case and gained rather significant media attention at the time. A former Stark County sheriff named Jim Shannon, who had responded to one of the Caton family's reports, is quoted as saying, "They were terrified. I will always believe them. They saw something. It's just, what did they see?" This case has become the subject of a 2015 documentary called Minerva Monster, directed by Seth Breedlove, who we might be talking about in a bit. Next up, we have Mark DeWerth. Mark DeWerth is a Ohio Bigfoot investigator who has collected a fair amount of evidence in the 30 years he's spent on the hunt. He's got footprints, audio recordings, and of course his first-hand encounter, which was the catalyst for his research. The story is he'd been exploring an old strip mine in search of badger dens, was followed out by something which soon stood up and looked at him, a big bipedal hairy creature. If that happened to me, I would not go looking for the creature again. I would move out of Ohio the next morning probably. Thought of an 8-foot tall hairy beast roaming through the woods has always been kind of creepy to me, but having one stare at you in a cave, imagine looking through a cave thinking all you're gonna see that day is maybe some badgers, and then you're met with an 8-foot tall hairy ape man glaring at you. "Only I'm allowed to find badgers in this cave." Whether the story is true or not, definitely a terrifying image. A video shared by Spectrum News shows Mark talking to several residents of Warren County, Ohio about his experience with this elusive creature, as well as hearing some of their first-hand accounts. He plays an audio recording, which sounds, again, pretty creepy. I love me some Bigfoot audio recordings. Anyway, Mark DeWerth has been interviewed on tons of podcasts discussing his Sasquatch experiences, so seek those out if you're interested. And at number 2, we have the Seth Breedlove encounter. Seth Breedlove is a filmmaker who's gone on to shoot a series called The Bigfoot Project, which you can find on a YouTube channel called Small Town Monsters. Before he had his first encounter, Seth described himself as a skeptic. In a YouTube video uploaded by Ed Ballant, Seth recounts the time he first encountered what he believes to be a Bigfoot. Seth had been riding down the countryside of Minerva, Ohio, when he spotted what looked to be a large bipedal creature with brown hair running through a clearing on a hill about 50 yards away. And it was fast, clearing the space in less than a second. One of the things that really stuck out to Seth most was the creature's very noticeable musculature, especially in the bicep area. Listening to Seth talk, he doesn't sound like he genuinely believes what he saw. He doesn't seem like he's making anything up on the spot or anything. Whether it was indeed the missing link or something more benign, he definitely did see something. And coming in at our #1 spot is the Salt Fork footage. This video, once again uploaded by the YouTube channel We Do It Outdoors, is only 10 minutes long, but there's a lot going on with this one. So two men were exploring Salt Fork State Park in eastern Ohio, and after hearing some strange noises, they happened to capture footage of what looks to be a large bipedal hairy animal. We have a few different pieces of evidence in this video. We have handheld footage of the creature moving through the trees. We have some drone footage, lots of sounds too. It's a very meaty video. Now, could it be a big guy in a suit? Look, it can always be a big guy in a suit, but I gotta say, if it is a suit, it's not a bad one. It's pretty good. It looks like it has some bulk to it. It doesn't look like just one of those generic gorilla suits you can pick up at Spirit Halloween. And what I like here is that the footage is clear. He's not relying on shaking the camera around or making the video extra grainy to try and obscure the image. And just for those reasons alone, I like this video, even if it isn't real. We also hear some vocalizations going on here, so like I said, it's just a lot happening. Check this one out over at We Do It Outdoors.
Number 4, Ridge's Asylum. Ridge's Asylum originally opened in 1874 and was known as the Athens Asylum for the Insane. It had 2 wings, one for female patients and one for the male patients. The most violent patients were housed at the outermost tip of each wing. By the start of the 1900s, the asylum had become dangerously overcrowded, and rumors of inhumane treatment at the hands of the overworked staff were growing. Despite this, it was not officially closed until 1993. Some parts of the building are still in use, while other areas are completely abandoned. One of the scariest places in the building is the outline of a body where Margaret Schrilling died in 1979. She apparently got lost in the disused part of the hospital in the winter of 1978-79 and was not found for more than a month. When the corpse was eventually removed, it left a stain that could never be washed away, which just makes me gag thinking about it, but imagine the smell, like, ew. Ugh. She is one of the many ghosts who is said to walk the asylum at night. Strange figures have been seen roaming around the old floors. Others have heard disembodied voices, footsteps, and screaming. Most appealing to imagination is the basement. Some claim severely disabled patients were kept on chains in dungeon-like places. Some say they've even heard the chains being pulled. Oh, and there's also a cemetery on the grounds which holds over 1,930 bodies. Of those, 700 women and 959 men lay under the headstones marked with only a number, which is sad. Number 3. Bobby Mackey's. Built in 1850, Bobby Mackey's is said to be the most haunted nightclub in America. When it was first built, the building served as a slaughterhouse and meat packing facility. The standard for most slaughterhouses of its day, the facility featured a well to collect the runoff of animal blood, innards, and other waste. If that image wasn't icky enough, there have also been several deaths in and around the club throughout the years. The place harbors energy so dark that a portal to hell is rumored to swirl somewhere within its basement. There is strange, suffocating heat, a trash can once flew through the air, and the apparition of a man with a handlebar mustache appears in the mirror. I would not want to get anywhere near that place ever. Number 2. Licking County Jail. Originally opened in 1889, the Licking County Jail is now home to only prisoners serving afterlife sentences. It contains stacks of cramped, grimy cells lining its dimly lit halls. Since being put out of commission, the jail has become a notoriously haunted hotspot. While it was operating, a total of 3 sheriffs and 19 inmates died on the premise. If you make your way to Licking County Jail, it's said you should peer between the cell bars as figures of prisoners are said to peer back. Visitors have reported hearing cell doors slamming, being touched, whispering in your ear, whistles, the sound of footsteps, some of those being what seems residual, the jingling of keys, screams, and moaning, as well as seeing strange light anomalies, full shadow figures, and photos with unexpected images in them. That sounds absolutely terrifying, and I would not want to go there. And coming in at number 1 is Sedamsville Rectory. The Sedamsville Rectory is a historical building that once served as the home for priests of Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church. Priests of questionable moral character were rumored to live here, if you know what I mean, including a man who was moved around considerably before retiring from the priesthood, leaving some to believe the church was covering up his tendency of mistreating animals. His fellow priests later confessed to hearing strange sounds coming from his bedroom and feeling uneasy in his presence. As the alleged site of the mistreatment, it's no shock that the place has some wicked demonic energy. Reports detail strange howling cries and deep scratches appearing in the flesh of workers. The current owner of the building, Terry Scott, even claimed that she was pushed by an invisible force. The presence was so evil that a priest was called in to perform an exorcism, but his efforts did little to keep the demonic energy at bay, and whatever monster lurked in there still remains, and I would not want to mess with it. Number 10. Malabar Farm. Malabar Farm was built in 1939 by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Louis Bromfield and was his home until his death in 1956. But before it was built, another family lived there in the 19th century. Celie Rose, a challenged young woman who lived there with her family, developed a romantic fixation on a neighborhood boy. When Celie's family told her to stop claiming the boy as her fiancé, she mixed rat poison in their porridge. Her father and brother died, but her mother survived. At her trial, Celie couldn't understand why her parents didn't come to see her. After all, she said, the rats always came back after her daddy fed them rat poison in the barn. Afterwards, she went on and lived with her mother, whom, yes, she tried to kill, but then Celie poisoned her again, and this time it worked. At age 23, Celie stood trial truly alone, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a state hospital. She lived out the rest of her life in an insane asylum, and since then the house has been haunted. One visitor saw a woman dressed like Celie Rose outside the house. People have seen lights flicker, felt a phantom cat, disembodied voices are heard, and there's an overall eerie feeling on the property. Yeah. No kidding. Number 9. Beaver Creek State Park. Although this park is beautiful during the day, it has a darker side at night. A portion of the park was once part of a canal system from the early 1800s. There are 2 locks that are said to be haunted. Jake's Lock is said to be named after a former canal worker who was struck by lightning while walking across the top of the lock. He died instantly, but some claim that on certain nights, especially stormy ones, Jake returns with his ghostly lantern to continue his evening's work. Spooky. Nearby, Gretchen's Lock is said to be haunted by the ghost of a canal worker's daughter. Legend has it her father put her coffin inside the lock until he could load her body onto a ship headed for their homeland. But when the coffin was loaded onto a ship bound for home, the ship was lost at sea and didn't make it. Gretchen, pleading to rejoin her mother, reportedly makes an appearance at the lock every year on the anniversary of her death, which is just very sad. Number 8. The Wandle House. The Wandle House was constructed in 1916 by the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway with funds contributed by railroaders. The Brewster Railroad YMCA featured 62 dormitory rooms used by the railroad workers, a restaurant, movie theater, and bowling alley. Today, the building is home to the Historical Society and houses memorabilia from baseball team photos, class pictures from Beach City and Brewster schools, railroad memorabilia and equipment, payroll records, and military uniforms. It's filled with tons of history, so those from the past like to visit. While there, you might come across Teresa, who worked in the eatery around the 1940s and 50s. People have also reported hearing noises, seen doorknobs turning on their own, and dark figures. And even one time, someone who was doing work in the basement of the building watched a person walk through a wall. Let me just say, I've seen a ghost walk through a wall before too, and it's creepy, so it's not something I'd like to see again. Number 7. Crybaby Bridge. Locals say if you stand on the Alliance Area Bridge at night, the sound of crying can be heard. Some say that mothers who did not want their sons or daughters during the baby boom would toss them from the bridge into the river below in the dark of the night. Others believe the cries stem from members of a cult kidnapping locals and ending their lives as part of their secret ritual. And finally, some say ghostly cries stem from a distraught mother who lost it after her daughter would not stop crying. In desperation, she tossed her over the bridge to her death, and upon realizing what she had done, the woman reportedly drove off the bridge her own life. This is all around sad and creepy, but if I heard crying noises without anyone around and on a bridge nonetheless, I would be terrified. Number 6. Old Chestnut Grove Cemetery. The story goes a woman accused of witchcraft was executed and buried at the cemetery. The townsfolk did not erect a marker, but instead built an iron fence around her grave, which was next to an old tree. An indentation next to the tree inside the fence marks her grave, and it's said that bad things will happen to those who get close to her grave. Another variation of the story says that several witches were executed and buried here, and their ghosts continue to haunt this area, which does not shock me. Not only did this happen, but on December 29, 1876, the number 5 Pacific Express was traveling over a high bridge, carrying approximately 159 passengers and crew when the bridge collapsed. It sent the train and the people on it into the ravine below, and 92 people died. Many were burned alive while trapped inside the crushed cars and are buried in a mass grave at this cemetery. Due to this, people have seen ghosts of the passengers, and unexplained voices on tape have been recorded. Number 5. Malsalon Public Library. Let me just say, there's more than books in this building. Before it was a library, it was a house, and former residents Clara Baldwin Barrick and Annie Baldwin both died in the home. Clara lived in the home from 1895 to 1909, and her daughter-in-law Annie died in the home in 1931. This might explain why this place is haunted. Some visitors have heard footsteps or smelt an unfamiliar perfume. Employees get a chill with no explanation in the outreach room located in the basement of the former home. A patron once claimed to have been pushed by an apparition while in the library, and a security camera in the library caught the elevator traveling to the 3rd floor at 3 a.m. The doors opened and a bright light could be seen, and the phenomena has been caught on tape several times, and there is no explanation, and that is just like an immediate no. No. Director Sherry Brown, who has worked at the library since 1979, said she was working in her office, a former bedroom of the home, after the library closed when she thought she saw an employee walk past her office door. She yelled out but got no answer. When she investigated, she found no one. Paranormal investigators have conducted research in the library and have gotten responses from the ghosts during electronic voice phenomenon sessions, and if you thought libraries were boring, let me just say this one definitely isn't. Number 4. Loch 4 Park. An incident occurred here in 1857 which has resulted in the park being haunted. A canal worker, whom some say was the loch tender, may have been angry about the potential of work being shut down and wanted revenge. The angry worker doused his fellow workers with a container of acid or some type of caustic liquid. It said the enraged worker tossed the lid open and flung the contents on his fellow workers, dumping the remnants on himself. Legend states that no immediate deaths ensued, but rather the men suffered gruesome, slower deaths that took several days. A few men perished due to their acid-eaten skin and organs. The man responsible also died. Today, screams and moans of those who were burned by the acid supposedly can still be heard by some if they listen closely while visiting Loch 4 Park. Also, the loch tender's cabin, which is located in the park, may also be haunted by the spirit of the angry worker. Number 3. Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle is reported to be the most haunted house in Ohio. Rumors about the eerie castle began to surface after multiple deaths occurred in the Tiedemann family while living in the mansion. The home was built in 1883 by Haynes Tiedemann, a banker and co-founder of the Union Banking and Savings Company. And let me just add that the house has 4 stories and more than 20 rooms and 80 windows. Now, Haynes allegedly tore down another house on the property where 4 of his children had died. His first wife, Lucia, died inside Franklin Castle in the 1890s. The American businessman would eventually bury 3 more of his children and his mother. Since then, the location has been the site of mysterious hauntings. A family with 6 children called the Romanos had moved into the house, and on the day they moved in, 2 of their children said they encountered a crying girl in white on the 3rd floor. But when Miss Romano investigated, no one was there. Soon, the family started hearing haunting organ music and heavy footsteps. 2 of the older Romano children woke up one night to find something yanking the blankets off their bed. bed, and Miss Romano once awoke to find herself screaming on her bedroom floor with an unseen presence screaming beside her. A priest advised the Romanos to move out, and in 1974 they did. But the hauntings didn't stop when the Romanos left. From there, the house was sold again and again and again. Each new occupant reported strange occurrences like passing through odd vapors, hearing a child crying, or seeing a woman in black standing in the window. Since reports of hauntings at Franklin's Castle increased, many turned their suspicions onto its original owner. Number 2. Sister Century House Restaurant. Now a restaurant, this building has seen a lot in the past. It was built in 1870 and has been home to several businesses in historic Canal Fulton throughout the years. It currently houses a family-owned restaurant, but was most notably home to a crematorium, which was located in the basement back in the early 1900s. I mean, since this place was once filled with dead people, it's no shock that it's haunted. There have been rumors of shadow people, a poltergeist in the kitchen, ghostly ladies in the basement, the entrance to an old tunnel, and even an unusual room that makes people a bit dizzy. The food though seems to be great, as the restaurant has a 4.6 star rating, so if you want to see some ghosts and have a great meal, I suggest you check this place out. And coming in at number 1, the Ohio State Reformatory. The Ohio State Reformatory opened its doors on September 15, 1896 to its first 150 offenders. These prisoners were brought by train from Columbus and put immediately to work on the prison sewer system and the 25-foot stone walls surrounding the complex. The reformatory remained in full operation until December 1990, when it was closed via federal court order as a result of a prisoner's class action suit citing overcrowding and inhumane conditions. For example, in the late 1930s, a riot broke out in the East Cell Block. The guards condemned 120 rioters to share 12 solitary confinement cells for 1 week without food or water. This punishment drove many to the brink of madness and death. During its 94 years as a working prison, 154,000 inmates passed through the gates of the Ohio State Reformatory. Many died of diseases like influenza and tuberculosis, some went mad, others ended their lives, and at least one inmate lit himself on fire. Just outside the reformatory, there are 215 numbered graves. While visiting, people have reported being pushed and punched by unseen forces. Many claim to feel a chill while on the prison grounds. People have also heard cell doors slam shut and seen dark apparitions. Even the road leading to the Ohio State Reformatory seems to be haunted. Local legend suggests it's the ghost of Phoebe Wise, a notorious hermit and eccentric.